Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another reading of Star Wars. I'm going to read the last two chapters of A New Hope, chapters 11 and 12. 11 and 12. No, I'm sorry, 12 and 13. 12 and 13. Chapters 12 and 13. We are in these last two chapters. We are the X-wing, the Rogue Squadron with Luke is getting ready to attack the first Death Star. The very first Death Star. So here we go. Chapter 12. Leia Organa sat silently before the huge display screen on which Yavin and its moons were displayed. A large red dot moved steadily toward the fourth of those satellites. Dodonna and several other field commanders of the Alliance stood behind her, their eyes also intent on the screen. Tiny green flecks began to appear around the fourth moon to coalesce into small clouds like hovering emerald gnats. Dodonna put a hand on her shoulder. It was comforting. The red represents the progress of the Imperial battle station as it moves deeper into Yavin's system. All our ships are all away, the commander behind him declared. A single man stood alone in the cylindrical hold secured to the top of the rapier thin tower. Rapier, R-A-P-I-E-R, thin tower. Staring through fixed mount electrobinoculars, he was the sole visible representative of the vast technology buried in the green purgatory below. Purgatory. Muted cries, moans, and primeval gurglings drifted up to him from the highest treetops. Some were frightening, some less so, but none were as indicative of power held in check as the four silvery starships which flew into view above the observer. This would be the X-wings, I believe. Keeping a tight formation, they exploded through humid air to vanish in seconds into the morning cloud cover far above. Sound shadows rattled the trees moments later in a forlorn attempt to catch up to the engines which had produced them. Slowly assuming attack formations combining X and Y wing ships, the various fighters began to move outward from the moon, out past the oceanic atmosphere of giant Yavin, out to meet the technologic execution. The man who had observed the byplay between Biggs and Luke now lowered his glare visor and adjusted his half-automatic, half-manual gun sights as he checked the ships to either side. Blue boys, this is Blue Leader. Blue boys, this is Blue Leader. Adjust your selectors and check in. Approaching target at 1.3. Ahead, a bright sphere of what looked like one of Yavin's moons, but wasn't, began to glow with increasing brightness. It shone like an eerie metallic glow, utterly unlike that of any natural satellite. As you watch the giant allergies. As you watch the giant battle station make its way around the rim of Yavin, Blue Leader's thoughts traveled back over the years, over the uncountable injustices, the innocents taken away for interrogation and never heard from again. The whole multitude of evils incurred by an increasingly corrupt and indifferent imperial government. All those terrors and agonies were concentrated, magnified, represented by the single bloated feat of engineering they were approaching now. This is it, boys, Blue Leader said. Blue 2, you're far too out. Close up, Wedge. The young pilot Luke had encountered in the temple briefing room glanced starboard, then back to his instruments. He executed a slight adjustment, frowning. Sorry, boss. My ranger seems to be a few points off. I'll have to go on manual. Check, Blue 2. Watch yourself. All ships stand by to lock S foils and attack mode. One after another, from Luke to Biggs, Wedge, and the other members of Blue Assault Squadron, the replies came back. Standing by. Execute, Blue Leader commanded. When John D. and Piggy had indicated they were in readiness. The double wings on the X-Wing fighters split apart like narrow seeds. Each fighter now displayed 4 wings, its wing-mounted armament and quadruple engines now deployed for maximum firepower and maneuverability. Ahead, the Imperial Station continued to grow. Surface features became visible as each pilot recognized docking bays, broadcast antenna, and other man-made mountains and canyons. As he neared that threatening black sphere for the second time, Luke's breathing grew faster. Automatic life support machinery detected the respiratory shift and compensated properly. Something began to buffet his ship, almost as if he were back in his skyhopper, wrestling with the unpredictable winds of Tatooine. He experienced a bad moment of uncertainty until the calming voice of Blue Leader sounded in his ears. We're passing through the outer shields. Hold tight. Lock down freeze floating controls and switch your own deflectors on. Double front. The shaking and buffeting continued, worsened. Not knowing how to compensate, Luke did exactly what he should have. Remained in control and followed orders. Then the turbulence was gone and the deathly cold peacefulness of space had returned. That's it, we're through, Blue Leader told them quietly. Keep all channels silent until we're on top of it. It doesn't look like they're expecting much resistance. Though half the great station remained in shadow, they were now near enough for Luke to be able to discern individual lights on its surface. A ship that could show phases matching a moon. Once again, he marveled at the misplaced ingenuity and effort which had gone into its construction. Thousands of lights scattered across its curving expanse gave it the appearance of a floating city. Some of Luke's comrades, since this was their first sight of the station, were even more impressed. Look at the size of that thing. Wedge and Tilly's gasped over his open pickup. Cut the chatter, Blue 2, Blue Leader ordered. Celebrate the attack velocity. Grim determination showed in Luke's expression as he flipped several switches above his head and began adjusting his computer target readout. R2-D2 re-examined the nearing station and thought untranslatable electronic thoughts. Blue Leader compared the station with the location of the proposed target area. Red Leader, he called toward the pickup. This is Blue Leader. We're in position. You can go right in. The exhaust shaft is farther to the north. We'll keep them busy down here. Red Leader was the physical opposite of Luke's squadron commander. He resembled the popular notion of a credit accountant. Short, slim, shy of face. His skills and dedication, however, easily matched those of his counterpart and old friend. We're starting for the target shaft now, Dutch. Stand by to take over if anything happens. Check, Red Leader, came the other's reply. We're going to cross their equatorial axis and try to draw their main fire. May the force be with you. From the approaching swarm, 2 squads of fighters broke clear. The X-Wing ships dove directly for the bulge of the station, far below, while the Y ships curved down and northward over its surface. Within the station, alarm sirens began a mournful, clangorous wail as the slow-to-react personnel realized the impregnable fortress was actually under organized attack. Admiral Motti and his tacticians had expected the rebels' resistance to be centered around a massive defense of the moon itself. They were completely unprepared for an offensive response consisting of dozens of tiny snub ships. Imperial efficiency was in the process of compensating for the strategic oversight. Soldiers scrambled to man enormous defensive weapons emplacements. Servo drivers thrummed as powerful motors aligned the huge devices for firing. Soon, a web of annihilation began to envelop the station as energy weapons, electrical bolts, and explosive solids ripped out of the oncoming rebel craft. This is Blue 5. Wonder why it's Blue 5, not Red 5. Maybe we'll get to that. This is Blue 5, Luke announced as his mic, as you nosedive his ship in a radical attempt to confuse any electronic predictors below. The gray surface of the battle station streaked past its ports. There's a Blue 5. I'm going in. I'm right behind you, Blue 5, a voice recognizable as big sound in his ears. The target in Luke's sights was as stable as that of the Imperial defenders, as evasive. Bolts flew from the tiny vessel's weapons. One started a huge fire on the dim surface below, which would burn until the crew of the station could shut off the flow of air to the damaged section. Luke's glee turned to terror as he realized he couldn't swerve his craft in time to avoid passing through the fireball of unknown composition. Pull out, Luke, pull out, Biggs was screaming at him. But despite commands to shift course, the automatic pressures wouldn't allow the necessary centrifugal force. His fighter plunged into expanding ball of superheated gases. Then he was through and clear on the other side. A rapid check of his controls enabled him to relax. Passage through the intense heat had been insufficient to damage anything vital, though all four wings bore streaks of black, carbonized testimony to the nearness of his escape. Hellflowers bloomed outside of his ship as he swung it up and around in a sharp curve. You all right, Luke? Came Biggs' concerned query. I got a little toasted, but I'm okay. A different stern sounded. Blue 5. You better give yourself more lead time or you're going to destroy yourself as well as Imperial's construction. The squadron leader warned. Yes, sir, I've got the hang of it now. Like you said, it's not exactly like flying the Skyhawk. Energy bolts and sun-bright beams continued to create a chromatic maze in the space above the station as rebel fighters crisscrossed back and forth over its surface, firing at whatever looked like a decent target. Two of the tiny craft concentrated on the power terminal. They blew up, throwing lightning-sized electric arcs from the station's innards. Inside, troopers, mechanicals, and equipment were blown in all directions by subsidiary explosions as the effects of the blast traveled back down various conduits and cables. Where the explosion had holed the station, escaping atmosphere sucked helpless soldiers and droids out into the bottomless black tomb. So they were sucked out into space. Moving from position to position, a figure of dark calm amid the chaos was Darth Vader. A harried commander rushed up to him and reported breathlessly, Lord Vader, we counted at least 30 of them, of two types. They're so small and quick, the fixed guns cannot follow them accurately. They continuously evade the predictors. Get all tired crews to their fighters. We'll have to go after them and destroy them ship by ship. Within numerous hangars, red lights began flashing, and an insistent alarm started to ring. Ground crews worked frantically to ready ships as flight-suited Imperial pilots grabbed for helmets and packs. Luke, requested Blue Leader, as he skimmed smoothly through the rain of fire. Luke, let me know when you're off the block. I'm on my way now. Watch yourself, the voice urged over the cockpit speaker. There's a lot of fire coming from the starboard side of that deflector tower. I'm on it, don't worry, Luke responded confidently. Putting his fighter into a twisting dive, he sliced once more across metal horizons. Antenna and small protruding emplacements burst into transitory flame as bolts from his wing tips struck with deadly accuracy. He grinned as he pulled up and away from the surface as intense lines of energy passed through space recently vacant. Darned if it wasn't like hunting womp rats back home in the crumbling canyons of Tatooine's wastes. Biggs followed Luke on a similar run, even as Imperial pilots prepared to lift clear of the station. Within the main docking base, technical crews rushed hurriedly to unlock power cables and conclude desperate final checks. More care was taken in preparation as more care was taken in preparing a particular craft nearest one of the bay ports, the one into which Darth Vader barely succeeded in squeezing his huge frame. Once set in the seat, he slid a eye, second set of eye shields across his face. The atmosphere of the war room back in the temple was one of nervous expectancy. Occasional blinks and buzzes from the main battle screen sounded louder than the soft susurration of hopeful people trying to reassure one another. Near a far corner of the mass of flickering lights, a technician leaned a little closer to his own readouts before speaking into the pickup suspended near his mouth. Squad leaders, attention, squad leaders, attention. We picked up a new set of signals from the other side of the station. Enemy fires coming your way. Luke received the report at the same time as everyone else. He began hunting the sky for the predicted Imperial craft, his gaze dropping to its instrumentation. My scope's negative. I don't see anything. Maintain visual scanning, Crew Leader directed. With all this energy flying, they'll be on top of you before your scope can pick them up. Remember, they can jam every instrument on your ship except your eyes. Luke turned again, and this time he saw an Imperial already pursuing an X-wing with a number Luke quickly recognized. Biggs, you picked one up on your tail. Watch it. I can't see it. Where is he? I can't see it, came his friend's panicked response. Luke watched helplessly as Biggs' ship shot away from the station's surface and out into clear space, closing closely followed by the Imperial. The enemy ship fired steadily at him, each successive bolt seeming to pass a little closer to Biggs' hull. Biggs' hull. He's on me tight, the voice sounded in Luke's cockpit. I can't shake him. Twisting, spinning, Biggs looped back toward the battle station, but the pilot trailing him was persistent and showed no sign of relinquishing pursuit. Hey, Biggs. I'm coming in, Luke called, wrenching his ship around so steeply that straining gyros and whined. So absorbed in his pursuit of Biggs was the Imperial pilot that he didn't see Luke, who rotated his own ship, flipped out of the concealing grate below, and dropped him behind him. Electronic crosshairs lined up according to the computer readout instructions, and Luke fired repeatedly. There was a small explosion in space, tiny compared to the enormous energies being put out by the emplacements on the surface of the battle station. But the explosion was of particular significance to three people: Luke, Biggs, and most particularly to the pilot of the TIE fighter who was vaporized with his ship. Got him, Luke murmured. I've got one. MLS restrained cry of triumph over the open intercom. Luke identified the voice as belonging to a young pilot known as John D. Yes, that was Blue 6 chasing another Imperial fighter across the mental landscape. Bolts jumped from the X-Wing in steady succession until the TIE fighter blew in half, sending leaf-like glittering metal fragments flying in all directions. Good shooting, Blue 6, the squadron leader commented. And he added quickly, watch out, you've got one on your tail. Within the fighter's cockpit, the gleeful smile on the young man's face vanished instantly as he looked around, unable to spot his pursuer. Something flared brightly nearby, so close that his starboard port burst. And then something hit even closer to in the interior of the now open cockpit became a mass of flames. I'm hit! I'm hit! That was all he had time to scream before oblivion took him from behind. Far above and to one side, Blue Leader saw John D's ship, X-Wing, expand into a fiery ball. His lips may have whitened slightly. Otherwise, he might as well never have seen the X-Wing explode. For all the reaction he displayed, he had more important things to do. On the fourth moon of Yavin, a spacious screen chose that moment to flicker and die, much as John D. had. Worried technicians began rushing in all directions. One turned a drawn face to Leia, the expectant commanders, and one tall, bronzed robot. The high band receiver has failed. It will take some time to fix. Do the best you can. Switch to audio only, Leia said. Someone overheard, and in seconds the room was filled with the sounds of distant battle, interspersed with the voices of those involved. Tighten up, Blue 2, tighten up, Blue Leader was saying. Watch those towers. Heavy fire, boss, came the voice of Wedge until it's 23 degrees. I see it. Pull in, pull in. We're picking up some interference. I can't believe it, Biggs was stammering. I've never seen such firepower. Pull in, Blue 5, pull in. A pause then. Luke, do you read me? Luke. I'm all right, Chief, came Luke's reply. I've got a target. I'm going to check it out. There's too much action down there, Luke, Biggs told him. Get out. Do you read me, Luke? Pull out. Break off, Luke, ordered the deeper tones of Blue Leader, excuse me. We've hit too much interference here, Luke. I repeat, break off. I can't see him. Blue 2, can you see Blue 5? Negative, Wedge replied quickly. There's a fire zone here. You wouldn't believe. My scanner's jammed. Blue 5, where are you? Luke, are you all right? He's gone, Biggs started to report solemnly. Then his voice rose. No, wait. There he is. Looks like a little fin damage, but the kid's fine. Relief swept the war room, but it was most noticeable in the face of the slightest, most beautiful senator present. That would be Leia. On the battle station, troopers worn half to death or deafened by the concussion of black guns were replaced by fresh crews. None of them had time to wonder how the battle was going, and at the moment, none of them much cared. The malady shared by common soldiers since the dawn of history. Luke skimmed daringly low over the station's surface, his attention riveted on a distant metal projection. Stick close, Blue 5, the squadron leader directed him. Where are you going? I picked up what looks like a lateral stabilizer, Luke replied. I'm going to try for it. Watch yourself, Blue 5. Heavy fire in your area. Luke ignored the warning as he headed the head of the fighter straight toward the oddly shaped protuberance. protuberance. His determination was rewarded when, after saturating it with fire, he saw it erupt in his spectacular ball of super hot gas. Got it, he exclaimed, continuing south for another run. Within the rebel temple fortress, Leia listened intently. She seemed simultaneously angry and frightened. Finally, she turned to 3PO and muttered, "Why is Luke taking so many chances?" The tall droid didn't reply. Watch your back, Luke, Biggs' voice sounded over the speakers. Watch your back. Fighters above you, coming in. Leia strained to see what she could only hear. She wasn't alone. Help him, R2, 3PO was whispering to himself. And keep holding on. Luke continued his dive even as he looked back and spotted the object of Biggs' concern. Biggs' concern, close on his tail. Reluctantly, he pulled up and away from the station's surface, abandoning his target. His tormentor was good, however, and continued closing in on him. I can't shake him, he reported. Something cut across the sky toward both ships. I'm on them, Luke, said shouted Wedge until he's hold on. Luke didn't have to wait for very long. Wedge's gunnery was precise and the TIE fighter vanished brightly shortly thereafter. Thanks, Wedge, Luke murmured, breathing a little more easily. Good shooting, Wedge. There was Biggs again. Blue 4, I'm going in. Cover me, Porkins. I'm right with you, Blue 3, came the other pilot's assurances. Biggs leveled them off, then let go with full weaponry. No one ever decided exactly what it was he hit, but the small tower that blew up under his energy bolts was obviously more important than it looked. A series of sequential explosions hopscotched across a large section of the battle station surface, leaping from one terminal to the next. Biggs had already shot past the area of disturbance, but his companion, following slightly behind, received a full dose of whatever energy was running wild down there. I've got a problem, Porkins announced. My converter's running wild. That was an understatement. Every instrument on his control panels had abruptly gone berserk. Eject, Blue 4, advised Biggs. Blue 4, do you read? I'm okay, Porkins replied. I can hold her. Give me a little room to run, Biggs. You're too low, his companion yelled. Pull up, pull up. With his instrumentation not providing proper information, and at the altitude he was traveling, Porkins' ship was simple for one of the big clumsy gun emplacements to track. It did as its designers had intended it should. Porkins's demise was as glorious as it was abrupt. It was comparatively quiet near the pole of the battle station. So intense and vicious had been blue and green squadrons' assault on the equator that Imperial resistance had concentrated there. Red leaders surveyed the false peace with mournful satisfaction, knowing it wouldn't last for long. Blue leader, this is Red leader, he announced into his mic. We're starting our attack run. The exhaust port is located and marked. No flak, no enemy fighters up here. Yet. Looks like we'll get at least one smooth run. I copy, Red leader. The voice of the counterpart responded. We'll try to keep them busy down here. 3 Y-wing fighters dropped out of the stars, diving toward the battle station surface. At the last possible minute, they swerved to dip into a deep artificial canyon, one of many streaking the northern pole of the Death Star. Metal ramparts raced past on 3 sides of them. Red Leader hunted around, noticed the temporary absence of Imperial fighters. He adjusted the control and addressed the squadron. This is it, boys. Remember, when you think you're close, go in closer before you drop that rock. Switch all power to front deflector screens. Never mind what they throw at you from the side. We can't worry about that now. Imperial crews lining the trench rudely awoke to the fact that their heretofore ignored section of the station was coming under attack. They reacted speedily, and soon energy bolts were racing at the attacking ships in a steadily increasing volume. Occasionally, one would explode near one of the onrushing Y-wings, jostling it without real damage. A little aggressive, aren't they? Red 2 reported over his mic. Red Leader reacted quietly. How many guns do you think, Red 5? Red 5, that should be Luke's call sign. Red 5, known casualty to most of the rebel pilots as Pops, somehow managed to make an estimate of the trench's defenses while simultaneously piloting his fighter through the growing hail of fire. His helmet was battered almost to the point of uselessness from the effects of more battles than anyone had a right to survive. I'd say about 20 emplacements, he finally decided, some on the surface and some on the towers. Red Leader acknowledged the information with a grunt as he pulled his computer targeting visor down in front of his face. Explosions continued to rock the fighter. Switch to targeting computers, he declared. Red 2, came one reply. Computer locked in and I'm getting a signal. The young pilot's rising excitement marked his reply. But the senior pilot among all the rebels, Red 5, was expectantly cool and confident, though it didn't sound like it from what he murmured half to himself. No doubt about it, this is going to be some trick. Unexpectedly, all defensive fire from the surrounding emplacement ceased. An eerie quiet clung to the trench as the surface continued to blur past the skimming Y-wings. What's this? Red 2 blurted, looking around worriedly. They stopped. Why? I don't like it, growled Red Leader. But there was nothing to confuse their approach now, no energy pulse to avoid. It was Pops who was the first to properly evaluate this seeming aberration on the enemy's part. Stabilize your rear deflectors now. Watch for enemy fighters. You pinned it, Pops, Red Leader admitted, studying the readout. Here they come. 3 marks, 210. A mechanical voice continued to recite the shrinking distance to the target, but it wasn't shrinking fast enough. We're setting ducks down here, he observed nervously. We'll just have to ride it out, the old man told them all. We can't defend ourselves and go for the target at the same time. He fought down old reflexes as his own screen revealed 3 TIE fighters in precise formation, driving almost vertically down toward 38104. Darth Vader announced as he calmly adjusted his controls. The ships whipped past behind him. I will take them myself. Cover me. Red 2 was the first to die. The young pilot never knowing what hit him, never seen his executioner. Despite his experience, Red Leader was on the verge of panic when he saw his wingman dissolve in flame. We're trapped down here, no way to maneuver. Trench walls are too close. We've got to loosen it up somehow. Stay on target. Come on, older voice. Stay on target. Red Leader took Pop's words like tonic, but it was all he could do to ignore the closing TIE fighters as the 2 remaining Y-wings continued to streak toward the target. Above them, Vader permitted himself a moment of undisciplined pleasure as he readjusted his targeting pewter, not computer, pewter. The rebel craft continued to travel at unevasive course. Again, Vader touched finger to fire control. Something screeched in Red Leader's helmet, and fire started to consume his instrumentation. It's no good, he yelled into his pickup. I'm hit. A second Y-wing exploded in a ball of vaporized metal, scattering a few solid shards of debris across the trench. The second loss proved too much even for Red 5 to take. He manipulated the controls and the ships commenced rising on the slow curve out of the trench. Behind them, the lead Imperial fighter moved to follow. Red 5, the blue leader, he reported. Aboard and run under heavy fire. TIE fighters dropped on us out of nowhere. I can't wait. Astern, a slight and remorseless enemy was touching a deadly button once more. The first bolt struck just past Pops, had risen high enough to commence evasive action, but he had pulled clear a few seconds too late. One energy beam seared his port engine, igniting gas within. The engine blew apart, taking controls and stabilizing elements with it. Unable to compensate, the out-of-control Y-wing began a long, graceful plunge toward the station surface. Are you all right, Red 5? The troubled voice called over the inner ship system. Lost 3. Lost Tyree. Lost Dutch. Pops explained slowly. Lost Tyree. Lost Dutch. Pops explained slowly, tiredly. They drop in behind you and you can't maneuver in the trench. Sorry, it's your baby now. So long, Dave. It was the last message of many from a veteran. Blue leader forced a crispness he didn't feel into his voice as he tried to shunt aside the death of his old friend. Blue boys, this is red leader. Rendezvous at Mark 6.1. All wings report in. Blue leader, this is Blue 10. I copy. Blue 2 here. Wedge acknowledged. Coming towards you, Blue leader. Luke was also waiting his turn to report when something beeped over his control board. A glance backward confirmed the electronic warning as he spotted the Imperial fighter slipping in behind. This is Blue 5, he declared, his ship wobbling as he tried to lose the TIE fighter. I have a problem here. Be right with you. He sent his ship into a steep dive toward the metal surface, then cut sharply up to avoid a burst of defensive fire from emplacements below. Neither maneuver shook his pursuit. I see you, Luke, came a reassuring call from Big. Stay with it. Luke looked above, below, and to the sides, but there was no sign of his friend. Meanwhile, energy bolts from his trailing assailant were passing uncomfortably close. Blasted Biggs, where are you? Something appeared, not to the sides or behind, but almost directly in front of him. It was bright and moving incredibly fast, and then it was firing just above him. Taken completely by surprise, the Imperial fighter came apart just as the pilot realized what had happened. Luke turned to the rendezvous mark as Biggs shot past overhead. Good move, Biggs. Fooled me too. I'm just getting started, his friend announced as he twisted his ship violently to avoid the fire from below. He hove into view over Luke's shoulder and executed a victory ball. Just point me at the target. Back alongside Yavin's indifferent bulk, Dodonna finished an intense discussion with several of his principal advisors, then moved on to the long-range transmitter. Blue leader, this is base 1. Double check your own attack prior to commencement. Have your wingmen hold back and cover. Keep half your group out of the range to make the next run. Copy, base 1. The response came. Blue 10, Blue 12, join with me. 2 ships leveled off to flank the squadron commander. Blue leader checked them out. Satisfied that they were positioned properly to the attack run, he set the group to follow in case it should fail. Blue 5, there's a blue leader. Luke, take Blue 2 and 3 with you. Hold up here, out of their fire, and wait for my signal to start your own run. Copy, blue leader. Luke acknowledged, trying to slow his heart slightly. May the force be with you. Biggs, Wedge, let's close it up. Together, the 3 fighters assumed a tight formation, high above the firefight still raging between other rebel craft of green and yellow squadrons and Imperial gunners below. The horizon flip-flopped ahead of a blue leader as he commenced his approach to the station surface. Blue 10, Blue 12, stay back until we spot those fighters, then cover me. All 3 X-Wings reached the surface, leveled off, then arched into the trench. His wingmen dropped farther and farther behind until Blue Leader was seemingly alone in the vast gray chasm. No defensive fire greeted him as he raced toward the distant target. He found himself looking around nervously, checking and rechecking the same instruments. This doesn't look right, he found himself muttering. Blue 10 sounded equally concerned. You should be able to pick up the target by now. I know, the disruption down here is unbelievable. I think my instruments are off. Is this the right trench? Suddenly, intense streaks of light began to shoot close by as the trench defenses opened up. Near misses shook the attackers. At the far end of the trench, a huge tower dominated the metal ridge, vomiting enormous amounts of energy at the nearing ships. It's not going to be easy with that tower up there, Blue Leader declared grimly. Stand by to close up a little when I tell you. Abruptly, the energy bolts ceased and all was silent and dark in the trench once again. This is it, Blue Leader announced, trying to locate the attack from above that had been coming. Keep your eyes open for those fighters. All short and long range scopes are blank, Lieutenant reported tensely. Too much interference here. Blue 5, can you see them from where you are? Luke's attention was riveted to the surface of the station. No sign of. Wait. There they are, coming in point 35. Three rapidly moving points of light caught his eye. Blue 10 and Blue 10 looked, excuse me, Blue 10 turned and looked into the indicated direction. Sun bounced off stabilizing fins as the TIE fighters looped downward. I see them. It's the right trench, all right, Blue Leader exclaimed as his tracking scope suddenly began a steady beeping. He adjusted his targeting instrumentation, pulling his visor down over his eyes. I'm almost in range. Target's ready. Coming up. Just hold them off for me for a few seconds. Keep them busy. Keep him busy. But Darth Vader was already setting his own fire control as he dropped like a stone toward the trench. Close up the formation. I'll take them myself. Blue 12 went first. Both engines blown, a slight deviation in flight path, and the ship slammed into the trench wall. Blue 10 slowed and accelerated, bobbed drunkenly, but could do little within the confines of those metal walls. I can't hold them long. You better fire while you can, Blue Leader. We're closing in on you. The squadron commander was wholly absorbed in lining up two circles within its targeting visor. We're almost home. Steady, steady. Blue 10 glanced around frantically. They're right behind me. Blue Leader was amazed at how calm he was. The targeting device was partly responsible, enabling him to concentrate on tiny abstract images to the exclusion of all else, helping him to shut out the rest of the inimical universe. Almost there. Almost there, he whispered. Then the two circles matched, turned red, and a steady buzzing sound. It's torpedoes away, torpedoes away. Immediately after, Blue 10 let his own missiles loose. Both fighters pulled up sharply, just clearing the end of the trench as several explosions billowed in their wake. It's a hit. We've done it, Blue 10 shouted hysterically. Blue Leader's reply was thick with disappointment. No, we haven't. They didn't go in. They just exploded on the surface outside the shack. Disappointment killed them too, as they neglected to watch behind them. Three pursuing Imperial fighters continued up out of the fading light from the torpedo explosions. Blue 10 fell to Vader's precision fire. Then the Dark Lord changed course slightly to fall in behind the squadron commander. I'll take the last one, he announced coldly. You two go back. Luke was trying to pick the assault team out of the glowing gases below when Blue Leader's voice sounded over the communicator. Blue 5, there's a Blue Leader. Move into position, Luke. Start your attack run. Stay low and wait until you're right on top of me. It's not going to be easy. Are you all right? They're on top of me, but I'll shake them. Blue 5 to Blue Pack. Let's go. Three ships peeled off and plunged toward the trench sector. Meanwhile, Vader finally succeeded in hitting his quarry, a glancing bolt that nonetheless started small, intense explosions in one engine. Its R2 unit scrambled back toward the damaged wing and struggled to repair the crippled power plant. R2 shut off the main feed to number 1 starboard engine, Blue Leader directed quietly, staring resignedly at instruments which were running impossibilities. Hang on tight, this could get rough. Luke saw that Blue Leader was in trouble. We're right above you, Blue Leader, he declared. Turn to point 05 and we'll cover. I lost my upper starboard engine, he replied. We'll come down for you. Negative. Stay there. Get set up for your attack run. You sure you're all right? I think so. Stand by for a minute. Actually, it was somewhat less than a minute before Blue Leader's gyrating X-Wing plowed into the surface of the station. Luke watched the huge explosion dissipate below, knowing without question its cause, sensing fully for the first time the helplessness of the situation. We've lost Blue Leader, he murmured absently. Nope, not particularly caring if his mic picked up the somber announcement. On Yavin 4, Leia Organa rose from her chair and nervously began pacing the room. Normally perfect nails were now jagged and uneven from nervous chewing. That's not in the movie. It was the only indication of physical unease. The anxiety visible in her expression was far more revealing of her feelings and anxiety and worry that filled the war room on the announcement of Blue Leader's death. Can they go on? Can they go on? She finally asked O'Donnell. The general replied with general resolve. They must. But we've lost so many. Without blue or red leader, how will they regroup? O'Donnell was about to reply, but held his words as more critical ones sounded over the speakers. Close it up, Wedge, Luke was saying, thousands of kilometers away. Biggs, where are you? I'm in and right behind you. Wedge replied soon after. Okay, boss, we're in position. O'Donnell's gaze went to Leia. He looked concerned. The three X-Wings moved closer together, high above the battle station's surface. Luke studied his instruments and fought irritably with one control that appeared to be malfunctioning. Someone's voice sounded in his ears. It was a young, old voice, a familiar voice. Calm, content, confident, and reassuring. A voice he had listened to intently on the desert of Tatooine, and in the guts of the station below once upon a time. Trust your feelings, Luke, was all the Kenobi-like voice said. Luke tapped his helmet, unsure whether he had heard anything or not. This was no time for introspection. The steely horizon of the station tilted behind him. Wedge, Biggs, we're going in, he told his women. We're going at full speed. Never mind finding the trench and then accelerating. Maybe that will keep those fighters far enough behind us. We'll stay far enough back to cover you. At that speed, will you be able to pull out in time? Are you kidding? Luke sneered playfully as they began to dive toward the surface. It'll be just like Baker's Canyon back home. I'm right with you, boss. Noted Wedge, emphasizing the title for the first time. Let's go. At high speed, the three slim fighters charged the glowing surface, pulling out after the last moment. Luke skimmed so close over the station hull that the tip of one wing grazed a protruding antenna, sending metal splinters flying. Instantly, they were enveloped in a meshwork of energy bolts and explosive projectiles. It intensified as they dropped down into the trench. We seem to have upset them, Biggs chortled, treating the deadly display of energy as though it were all a show being put on them for their amusement. This is fine, Luke commented, surprised at the clear view ahead. I can see everything. Wedge wasn't quite as confident as he studied his own readouts. My scope shows the tower, but I can't make out the exhaust port. Must be awfully small. Are you sure the computer can target it? It better, Biggs muttered. Luke didn't offer an evaluation. He was too busy holding the course through the turbulence produced by exploding bolts. Then, as if on command, the defensive fire ceased. He glanced around and up for signs of expecting TIE fighters, but saw nothing. His hand went to drop the target visor into position, and for just a moment he hesitated. Then he swung it down in front of his eyes. Watch yourselves, he ordered his companions. What about that tower? Wedge asked worriedly. You worry about those fighters, I'll worry about the tower, Luke snapped. They rushed on, closing on the target every second. Wedge stared upward and his gaze suddenly froze. Here they come, 0.3. Vader was setting his controls when one of his wingmen broke attack silence. They're making their approach too fast. They'll never get out in time. Stay with them, Vader commanded. They're going too fast to get it fixed, his other pilot announced with certainty. Vader studied several readouts and found that his sensors confirmed the other estimates. They'll sure have to slow down before they reach that tower. Luke contemplated a few in his target visor. Almost home. Seconds passed and the twin circlets achieved congruence. His Vader convulsed in the firing control. Torpedoes away. Pull up. Too far Powerful explosions rocked the trench, striking harmlessly far to one side of the minute opening. Three TIE fighters shot out of the rapidly dissipating fireball, closing on the retreating rebels. Hit them, Vader ordered softly. Luke detected the pursuit at the same time as his companions. Wedge, Biggs split up as the only way will shake them. The three ships dropped toward the station and abruptly raced off in three different directions. All three TIE fighters turned and followed Luke. Vader fired on a crazily dodging ship, missed, and grounded himself. The force is strong with this one. Strange. I'll take him myself. Luke darted between defensive towers and wove a tight path toward protecting docking bays, all to no avail. A single remaining TIE fighter stayed close behind. An energy bolt nicked one wing, close by an engine. It started to spark irregularly, threateningly. Luke fought to compensate and retain full control. Still trying to shake his persistent assailant, he dropped back into a trenching. I'm hit, he announced, but not bad. R2, see what you can do with it. The tiny droid unlocked himself and moved to work on the damaged engine as energy bolts flashed from dangerously close. Hang on back there, Luke counseled the R2 unit as he worked a path toward projecting towers. The fighter spinning and twisting tightly through the topography of the station. Fire remained intense as Luke randomly changed direction and speed. A series of indicators on the control panel slowly changed color. Three vital gauges relaxed and returned to where they belong. I think we got it, R2, Luke told him gratefully. I think. There, that's it. Just try to lock it down so it can't work loose again. R2 beeped in reply while Luke studied the whirling panorama behind him and above him. I think we've lost those fighters too. Blue group, there's a blue 5. Are you clear? He manipulated several controls and the X-Wing shot out of the trench, still followed by the emplacement fighter. I'm up here waiting, boss, Wedge announced from his position high above the station. I can't see you. I'm on my way, Blue. I'm on my way. Blue 3, are you clear, Biggs? I've had some trouble, his friend explained, but I think I lost him. Something showed up again, damnably, on Biggs' screen. A glance behind showed a TIE fighter that had been chasing him for the past several minutes, dropping in once more behind him. He swung down toward the station again. Nope, not yet, Biggs told the others. Hold on, Luke. I'll be right there. A thin, mechanical voice sounded over the speakers. Hang on, R2, hang on. Back at the temple headquarters, 3PO turned away from the curious human faces which had turned to stare at him. As Luke soared high above the station, above another X-Wing swung in close to him. He recognized Wedge's ship and began hunting around anxiously for his friend. We're going in. Biggs, join up. Biggs, are you all right? Biggs. There was no sign of the other fighter. Wedge, do you see him anywhere? Within the transparent canopy of the fighter bobbing close by, a helmeted head shook slowly. Nothing. Wedge told him over the communicator. Wait a little longer. He'll show. Luke looked around, worried, studied several instruments when came a decision. We can't wait. We got to go now. I don't think I made it. Hey, you guys, cheerful voice demanded to know. What are you waiting for? Luke turned sharply to his right, in time to see another ship racing past and slowing slightly ahead of him. Don't ever give up on old Biggs, the intercom directed, as the figure in the X-Wing ahead looked back at them. Within the control center room of the battle station, a hurried officer rushed up to a figure studying the great battle screen and waved a handful of printouts. So we completed an analysis of the attack plan. There is a danger. Should we break up the engagement or make plans to evacuate? The ship is standing up. Governor Tarkin turned an incredulous gaze on the soldier and shrank back. Evacuate? I don't remember when to try it. We're about to destroy the last remnants of the Alliance, and you call for an evacuation? You overestimate the chances badly. Now get out. Overwhelmed by the governor's fury, the subdued officer turned and retreated from the room. "We're going in," Luke declared as he commenced his dive toward the surface. Wedge and Biggs followed just aft. "Let's go, Luke," a voice he had heard before sounded in his head. Again he tapped his helmet and looked around. It sounded as if the speaker were standing just behind him, but there was nothing, only silent metal and nonverbal instrumentation. Puzzled, Luke turned back to his controls. Once more, energy bolts reached out for them, passing harmlessly on both sides as the surface of the battle station charged up into its face. But the defensive fire wasn't the cause of the renewed trembling. Luke suddenly experienced wasn't the cause of the renewed trembling Luke suddenly experienced. Several critical gauges were beginning to swing back into the danger zone again. He leaned toward the pickup. "R2, those stabilizing elements. Those are broken loose again. See if you can't lock it back down. I gotta have full control." Ignoring the bumpy ride, the energy beams and explosions lighting space around them, the little robot moved to repair the damage. Additional tireless explosions continued to buffet the three fighters as they dropped into the trench. Biggs and Wedge dropped behind to cover for Luke as he reached to pull down the targeting visor. For the second time, a peculiar hesitation swept through him. His hand was slower, yet as he finally pulled the device down in front of his eyes, almost as if the nerves were in conflict with one another. As expected, the energy beam stopped as if on signal, and he was barreling down the trench unchallenged. "Here we go again," Wedge declared as he spotted three Imperial fighters dropping down on him. Biggs and Wedge began crossing behind Luke, trying to draw the coming fire away from him and confuse the pursuers. One TIE fighter ignored the maneuvers, continuing to gain inexorably on the rebel ships. Luke stared into the targeting devices, then reached up slowly to move it aside. For a long minute, he pondered the deactivated instrument, staring at it as if hypnotized. Then he slid it sharply back in front of his face, and studied the tiny screen as it displayed the shifting relationship of the X-Wing to the nearing exhaust port. "Hurry, Luke," Biggs called out as he wrenched his ship in time to narrowly avoid a powerful beam. "They're coming in faster this time. We can't hold them much longer." With inhumane precision, Darth Vader depressed the fire control of his firing. A loud, desperate shout sounded over the speakers, blending into the final agonized scream of flesh and metal as Biggs' fighter burst into a billion glowing splinters that rained down on the bottom of the trench. Wedge heard the explosion over his speakers and hunted frantically behind him for the trailing enemy ships. "We've lost Biggs," he yelled toward his own pickup. Luke didn't reply immediately. His eyes were watering, and he angrily wiped them clear. They were blurring his view of the target readout. "We're a couple of shooting stars, Biggs," he whispered huskily, "and we'll never be stopped." His ship rocked slightly from a near miss, and he directed his words to his remaining wingman, biting hard down hard on the end of each sentence. "Close it up, Wedge. You can't do any more good back there. R2, try to give me a little more power in the rear deflectors." The R2 unit hurried to comply as Wedge pulled up alongside Luke's ship. The trailing TIE fighters also increased their speed. I am on the leader," Vader informed the soldiers. "Take the other one." Luke flew just in front of Wedge, slightly to port side. Energy bolts from the pursuing Imperials began to streak close by them. Both men crossed each other's path repeatedly, striving to present as confusing a target as possible. Wedge was fighting with his controls when several small flashes and sparks lit his control board. One small panel exploded, leaving molten slag behind. Somehow he managed to retain control of the ship. "I've got a bad malfunction, Luke. I can't stay with you." "Okay, Wedge, get clear." "Sorry." Wedge mumbled a heartfelt sorry, and peeled up out of the trench. Luke concentrated his attention on the one ship remaining before him, fired. Luke didn't see the lethal near lethal explosion which burst close behind him. Nor did he have time to examine the smoking shell of twisted metal which now rolled alongside one engine. The arms went limp on the little droid. All three TIE fighters continued to chase the remaining X-Wing down the trench. It was only a matter of moments before one of them caught the bobbing fire with a crippling burst. Except now there were only two Imperials pursuing. The third had become an expanding cylinder of decomposing debris, bits, and pieces of which slammed through the walls of the canyon. Vader's remaining wingmen looked around in panic for the source of the attack. The same distortion field that caught the confused rebel instrumentation now did likewise to the two TIE fighters. Only when the freighter fully eclipsed the sun forward did the new threat become visible. It was a Corellian transport far larger than any fighter, and it was diving directly at the trench. But it didn't move precisely like a freighter. Whoever was piloting that vehicle must have been unconscious or out of his mind, the wingman decided. Wildly, he adjusted controls in an attempt to avoid the anticipated collision. The freighter swept by just overhead, but in missing it, the wingman slid too far on one side. A small explosion followed as two huge fins of the paralleling TIE fighters intersected. Screaming uselessly into its pickup, the wingman fluttered toward the near trench wall. He never touched it. His ship erupted in flame before contact. To the other side, Darth Vader's fighter began spinning helplessly. Unimpressed by the Dark Lord's desperate glower, various controls, and instruments gave back readings which were brutally truthful. Completely out of control, the tiny ship continued spinning in the opposite direction from the destroyed wingman out into the endless reaches of deep space. Whoever was at the controls of the supple freighter was neither unconscious nor insane, well, perhaps slightly touched, but fully in command nonetheless. It soared high above the trench, turning to run protectively above Luke. "You're all clear, kid," a familiar voice informed. "Now blow this in so we can all go home." This pep talk was followed by a reinforcing grunt, which could only have been produced by a particularly large Wookiee. Luke looked up through the canopy and smiled, but his smile faded as he turned back to the targeting visor. There was a tickling inside his head. "Luke, trust me," the tickle requested, forming words for the third time. He stared into the targeter. The emergency exhaust port was sliding toward the fiery circle again, as it had once before, when he had missed. He hesitated, but only briefly this time, and shoved the targeting screen aside. Closing his eyes, he peered and mumbled to himself, as though in an internal conversation with something unseen. With the confidence of a blind man in familiar surroundings, Luke moved to thumb over several controls and touched one. Soon after, a concerned voice filled the cockpit from the open speakers. "Base 1 to Blue 5. The targeting device is switched off. What's wrong?" "Nothing," Luke murmured, barely audible. "Nothing." He blinked and cleared his eyes. Had he been asleep? Looking around, he saw that he was out of the trench and shooting back into open space. A glance outside showed the familiar shape of Han Solo's ship, shadowing him. Another at the control board indicated he had released his remaining torpedoes, although he couldn't remember touching the firing stud. Still, he must have. The cockpit speakers were alive with excitement. "You did it! You did it!" Wedge was shouting over and over. "I think they went right in." "Good shot, kid," Solo complimented him, having to raise his voice to be heard over Chewbacca's unrestrained howling. Distant, muted rumblings shook Luke's ship, an omen of incipient success. Incipient success. He must have fired the torpedoes, mustn't. Gradually, he regained his composure. "Glad you were here to see you. Now let's get some distance between us and that thing before it goes." I hope Wedge was right. Several X-Wings, Y-Wings, and one battered-looking freighter accelerated away from the battle station, racing toward the distant curve of Yavin. Behind them, small flashes of fading light marked the receding station. Without warning, something appeared in the sky in place of it, which was brighter than the glowing gas giant, brighter than its far-off sun. For a few seconds, the eternal night became day. No one dared look directly at it. Not even multiple shields sat on high could dim that awesome flare. Space filled temporarily with trillions of microscopic metal fragments propelled past the retreating ships by the liberated energy of a small artificial sun. The collapsed residue of the battle station would continue to consume itself for several days, forming for that brief span of time the most impressive tombstone on this corner of the cosmos. That is chapter 12.